Hello, I'm Deborah Malone, founder of The Internationalist and host of Internationalist Marketing TV. Today's guest is Anthony Farina, Chief Communications and Brand Officer of biotech giant CSL. Anthony, it is always a pleasure to see you, whether virtually or live. But what I do want to say, at least now, is that you have always impressed me, not only with your enthusiasm, but how you are always moving forward with both new initiatives and also being purpose driven at the heart of everything that you do. So I know that there's been a lot of change. Let me first start by welcoming you to the show. So welcome, Anthony.
Great. Thanks, Deborah. Always a pleasure seeing you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, let's be provocative here. Talk to me about CSL 2.0. What's going on to a company that's over 100 years old now? You're reinventing yourself? What's happening?
Absolutely. So, CSL started in 1916 as a small little government agency to provide medicines to the people of Australia. And there's a reason we've been around for such a long time. It's the continuation of innovation, reinventing ourselves, and being relevant. And so we became a public company in 1994, and there's been incredible growth. But the growth has really been fostered in the last 8 years or so, just dramatic. When I joined the company, we had 12,000 employees. We now have over 30,000 employees. We now provide medicines in over 100 countries in the world. And so there's been this incredible stretch of growth during that time. However, COVID hits, things happen, good strategy in place. We continue to get through it. And we really thought we needed to be a different type of company coming out of COVID. A lot of things have changed, whether it was ways of working or different operating models and those kind of things. And so as we were plodding through COVID, just like everyone else, we didn't lose that opportunity to sort of take a step back and say, how do we want to look coming out of the pandemic? How do we want to continue to be, 100 more years coming out of it? And what I would say is we really are now giving birth to what we're calling CSL 2.0. And so in December, we made an offer to acquire Vifor Pharma, a terrific company based in Switzerland around iron treatment, nephrology, and those kind of things. And I don't know how many other companies would make a commitment to purchase another company for $12 billion, our largest acquisition in the history, and really bring this together in the midst of the pandemic. But we always plan on continuing to grow. Even prior to that, we were looking at how do we want to rebrand ourselves? How do we want to be seen under the umbrella of CSL, which to our delight, as we were doing the research, a great deal of global brand equity already built into CSL. And so we were already doing that work with the acquisition. And so we went through the rebranding. Additionally, all during this time too, we introduced our sustainability strategy in terms of how do we contribute not only to people with our medicines, but also how do we make the planet better too. So it's that dual focus around people and planet as well. And of course, just like others, we are making great strides around our diversity, equity, inclusion efforts as well. And so when you package this all together, it's really a different type of company, but continues to focus on patients and public health, but also protecting the planet, doing the right things for our communities in which we operate. So we're really excited. And I can tell you, there's just been a great deal of chatter within the walls of CSL.
Well, I can hear how excited you are by just the enthusiasm in your voice, but I'm sure it didn't make for a very restful August or a restful summer, given how much you've done. But let me ask you something though. You do talk about the history, and you also talk about a legacy for the future. So how do you begin to balance that when you talk about 2.0? How do you rebrand without giving up some of the essentials that have been with the company for so long?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, Deborah, because the one thing that I think is really easy to lose sight of is where you came from before where you're going, right? And I think going through an exercise like that gives you an opportunity to reflect on your strength and weaknesses, how others view you as well. And so we did a fair amount of soul searching, during that time, research, obviously, and those kind of things. And the other piece is, what are the expectations of the world, not just today, but going forward? Because when you're a company with the longevity that we have, we think about the long term. We're not a short term play, and that's why I think there's organizations like us who really do make a difference in the world. You can do well, and you can also do good all at the same time. And so as we were going through this exercise, we wanted to make sure we didn't lose our essence, our personality of who we are. But we also want to be able to leverage this and continue to evolve as a company as well. And so I really do believe, as we go forward, we go back to, why do we exist? The DNA, that company that started, well, actually, organization, government agency, started to support people, not necessarily shareholders when it was a government agency in 1916. And that DNA is inherently, that red thread is inherently woven into the DNA of CSL, even to today. And one of the things our CEO Paul Pro loves to say is, look, if you do the right thing, the scoreboard will take care of itself. And that's the God's honest truth. And so we continue to march along and evolve, and it's just really exciting to be a part of.
No, as I say, I can certainly hear that. There's a couple of things that you mentioned just now. You talked about looking a lot at where you come from and the soul searching involved in that. And we've had so many conversations about how, for many companies, that's a wonderful starting point to understand your purpose or your DNA or whatever you might call it. But you also said something that I found quite extraordinary, and that's the expectations of the world going forward. And it does seem that COVID has been a reset, and I think that we will continue to experience that reset for years to come. I mean, I think that we're only beginning to grapple with what that means now. But you also, and I'm trying to bring together everything that you've been saying, but you also said that the thing that's critical in terms of a company's longevity is innovation, reinvention, and being relevant.
Mm.
So I don't know if you can just further tie together some of those thoughts about the origins of purpose and the expectations of the world, and how then that all ladders up to CSL 2.0.
Yeah, yeah. Look, people think about innovation, and they typically think about R&D, but we think about innovation all across the enterprise. And so, as the leader of the corporate affairs and communications function, there's an expectation within my global organization to be innovative. That's part of who we are. And when the company is successful and you continue to develop medicines and those kind of things and have success, it's really hard to really drive the need to reinvent yourself, right? You've been incredibly successful. Those kind of things are happening, but we really kind of go back to this idea of what is needed in the world. Let's continue to evolve, and let's meet those needs. And innovation is part of all across the enterprise at CSL. I'm not so sure many other companies think about it, that way. And as we all know, if you stop innovating, you're starting your exit. And so think about, previous brands like Blockbuster, right? Nokia, Kodak. I mean, all those kind of examples in the past. really drive an organization to continue to prosper and those kind of things. But for us, innovations all across the enterprise, not just in R&D.
So how would you frame innovation? Because sometimes people associate innovation with disruption or
Mhm.
anticipating disruption. In other cases, people are thinking of it more in terms of entrepreneurial thinking and in almost, thinking like a startup as just a white box and begin again. How do you define that? Because I think that's essential to
Yeah.
how everyone moves forward.
Well, I think everything you just mentioned is all the above, right? However, when you really think about the definition of innovation, it's really simple. And it's about something that's being applied to make a difference, that is disruptive. It's the application part of it. And so you can have all these great concepts, great ideas, but you don't have innovation until it's applied, whether that's taking science out of a lab and into the marketplace. There's all type of examples like that. Tech into cars and those kind of things. The application is really, really critical. And that's where I think, organizations, global organizations really have a part to play that drive innovation, especially coming out of COVID. And I'm not talking about just, the vaccines and those kind of things. There's opportunities in terms of, how do you recruit talent differently, right?
Yes.
So you no longer think about geographies, right? You think about pools and you think about the world instead of a certain geography. It's a really interesting way to, and if you can harness it correctly around the innovation piece, actually accelerate the application of it versus how we would typically innovate in a lab or those kind of things. The other thing is partnerships, right? A lot of organizations struggle in terms of finding strategic partnerships, and there may be this mindset of, oh, we can do everything. Well, I think sometimes if you have that thought, you can lose your way on your core capabilities. And so one of the things that we really try to be reminded of, what do we do the best? And let's invest in that and let's really hone in on that. Now we'll look for adjacencies, but if there's areas where we're not experts on, we want to partner with the best and brightest. And that could be in a science piece of it. It could be with other universities. Obviously, INT is a great example of that. But strategic partnerships, especially all around the world now, are really, really critical.
No, that's a very interesting point that you make, and something sticks in my mind as a very simple example of that. I remember having a conversation with someone at Dannon who said, "Look, we're in the food business,
Mm.
and we know that there are food insecurity issues and hunger insecurity issues, but we also know that there's certain NGOs that can handle that a lot better than us because that's their expertise. And we can market it, we can brand it, we can put it on the packaging, we can believe in it, we can do everything else. But sometimes you need somebody else with to execute it. And I,
Hmm.
I think we're probably going to see a lot more, let's say, for-profit and nonprofit partnerships as we embrace these broader issues. That the thing about how the expectations of the world have changed, and I think that business is adapting to those expectations more quickly than anyone else is. And I think that as we go forward, we're only going to see more from business. Do you see it yourself? Do you see the business model changing to be not only but more sustainable, but perhaps more responsible?
Oh, no question. No question. So when you, as a publicly traded company, and you have shareholders who are very curious in terms of, what you're doing from a sustainability standpoint, that's always going to catch the C-suite's attention. And we've seen that over the last, 3 or 4 years in particular, really growing over time. It's no longer a little sort of niche sort of group. It's very broad right now. And I think that's a great thing. you see, and there's different schools of thoughts in terms of, social justice, and when should companies weigh in on that. And it's a very complex topic to get into. People have various opinions. The fact that we're actually talking about that is really, really important, because there's no one size fits all. There's no silver bullet. There's no really one answer, on it. I think it depends on each organization, how they feel most comfortable. And personally, I believe that organizations should not be judged, right? But the fact that we're talking about that is really, really good and really, really healthy. The other is, you also have to think about your employees, right? Or potential employees. And so they're looking at, how do companies respond? And I want to work for a company that makes a difference, and how I behave. And it's not just what you provide to the world, but how you do it too. Are you adhering to your values and those kind of things? And those all come into play. And I personally think that's really, really important, particularly the values piece of it, because when you see organizations adhere to their values, they really walk the talk, it's very obvious. And when they don't, that's really obvious too. But it sort of is a mixed bag, anymore. But the expectations of being value driven, being purpose driven, being socially conscious, and those kind of things, those are the expectations, out there. You just want to make sure that you're doing the right thing and not losing your authenticity, because at the end of the day, an organization still has to be true to itself, its brand, its employees, and its shareholders.
Yeah, and I think that is becoming increasingly complex, and I do think that the C-suite is judged now more on that, as they also try to balance profitability at a time when we might be seeing some economic challenges ahead, which I guess is no surprise after everything that the world has been through. Well,
Mm.
let me just bring it back to one thing that I know you're very passionate about, and I think that'll bring us perhaps full circle. But you've been very vocal and very supportive of what it takes to build a purpose-driven organization. You've also been very realistic in knowing that there is certainly a lot of whether we call it purpose washing. I sometimes like to talk about it as a purpose gap, in that
Mm.
expectations don't always meet the actions that companies promise. But I'd love to know, as we get into a stage now where we have to balance
Mm.
purpose and profit, what 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 you might see ahead, or any advice you might have, given the hard work that you've done, over these 8, 9 years to get a company to be able to go to 2.0, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that I found incredibly interesting when I started at CSL was to work with a CEO who understood purpose. And so that was 8 years ago. And we decided, you know what, we're going to toss mission and vision, because people get that confused anyway. And we're going to have a very simple purpose statement. And so that really serves as the foundation of why an organization exists. And that has really served us well during good times and bad, right? And then from that purpose is a strategy that was introduced, a brand that was introduced, as well. And one of my fears, around purpose is it's become the topic du jour over the last 3 years or so. And it's truly, purpose is genuinely bigger than marketing. It's larger than communications. It's not a campaign. It really has to be foundational to why an organization exists. It's that simple. So that statement is really an excellent start. It also has to be authentic to an organization. And so if company X is making widgets, then that purpose should be to be the best widget maker it can be and be true to itself. The third part I would say is it can't sit in marketing and communications. Purpose has to be embedded within the culture of an organization led by the C-suite. And people have to feel it. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we don't talk about shareholder value. We talk about doing the right things, being purpose driven, adhering to our values, and the scoreboard takes care of itself. And, the other piece I would say is purpose really needs to be anchored in the business strategy. And so, purpose is foundational to all brand strategy and activities. It's not a campaign, like I said. And then the other piece of it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier before is, purpose, if we can foster purpose with our stakeholders and collaborate with them, whether it's a nonprofit or others and those kind of things, and kind of come to the middle in an area of common ground, that can help advance an organization's purpose too, and provide that halo effect, if you will, and greater credibility. So, those are sort of the watchouts or the things that I think really make a really good purpose for an organization. And you see campaigns and they're purpose driven and those kind of, and it's one of my pet peeves and just irks me when I see that. So going back to your question, Deborah, those who choose between profits and purpose, I think, during the next time, we're going to see those who are truly purpose driven continue to be purpose driven. And if organizations are making choices between profits or purpose, I think they'll be seen as frauds. And I don't think that's a bad thing for the betterment of business overall.
Yeah, and I think you may be right. And let's hope that over the next several years, we continue to see that, and also see how the role of business is to truly make the world a better place, economically, for the planet, for the people, and so on. Listen, I think that we should probably stop there, because after that, the only thing that we have to worry about is like protecting the universe. So maybe that will be in our next session.
Absolutely. Bring it on.
It's always a joy, and congratulations on some amazing successes and a remarkably busy summer. So
great. Thanks, Deborah.
All right.
It was a pleasure. Thank you. Take care.
The Internationalist focuses on the continual reinvention of marketing by highlighting inspirational marketers around the world and their ideas as they move the industry forward. Internationalist Marketing TV shares these perspectives through interviews and personal stories.